Hello everyone, this is Srikanti and today we are going to learn about building a positive mindset for effective study and learning. Let's get started. Now, the principle of the harvest is a foundational concept that emphasizes the idea that what we reap is what we sow. Now, using the analogy of a farmer, it illustrates that while the farmers can plant seeds, water them, and even protect them from harm, they cannot control how or when the seeds will grow. Now, this also reflects in the reality of sharing knowledge or insights with others. Now, people may not always be ready to receive or understand of what you offer, but our responsibility lies within doing our part sincerely and consistently without forcing the outcomes. Now, it is important to understand the three parts of our mind: emotional, rational, and wise. Now, each of them plays a different role in how we process the world and respond to situations. Now, recognizing which part we operate from helps us shift towards more effective and balanced thinking. First, we're going to be talking about the emotional mind. Now, the emotional mind is a reactive and often self centered. People operating primarily from this part of their mind tend to respond to challenges or new ideas with emotional outbursts or defensiveness in this case. Now, their thinking is often dominated by how they feel and and they may lack the maturity to recognize the limits of their own perspective. Now, conversations with emotionally driven people can feel draining as they often resist deeper understanding or reflection. Let's say you and your partner had a really heated argument and you're really upset and angry, and maybe even some sadness and anxiety about the state of your relationship next time. And you're feeling so horrible that you lash out at your partner, you even make insult them by calling them names, and even throwing something across the room or punching the wall, and maybe even slamming the door and announcing that your relationship is over as you storm out. Now, what did you understand in this? Well, in this scenario, you're acting based on your emotions. Your urge to do something to stop the feeling as bad as you do is so strong that it even drives your action. Now, this overrides any voice of the reason in your head. Now, this is all purely based on the emotional mind and no reasonable mind. Now let's go over the rational mind. Now, rational mind is the state of mind that we generally associate with the thinking. Now, the previous slides that we talked about, we generally associated with the heart or with our feelings, emotions. Now we are now this is generally associated with the thinking. Now, it is very cool, rational, and also very like task focused. Now, when we are in reasonable mind, we are often governed by facts, reasons, logic, and pragmatic values, and feelings aren't as valued in this case. Now, it's like we are Spock on the Star Trek, cool, calm, collected, and logical. Now, it also consists of structure and intellectuality. Now, while it can be highly informative and precise, it often lacks the emotional connection and empathy. Now, those who purely operate from this mind can come across as cold, dismissive, and disconnected. Well, the rational thinkers may disregard others' feelings as irrelevant, which can usually create barriers in communication and understanding. Now, even though they're intellectually advanced, this approach may lack the warmth and the responsiveness needed for the meaningful human connection. Now let's look at an example for that. Now let's see that if you were to approach the same problem from the reasonable mind, which we use the relationship example. Now, the results would be much more different. Now, in the first case, you might decide to take some time out and then like try to step away from the argument with your partner until you both had the chance to calm down. And then instead of maybe ending the relationship, then you maybe make your pros and cons list, which is shown right here, to try to figure out if the relationship is still if the relationship is still working out for you. Now, even and maybe you would find that even though there are some problems now, but the overall relationship looks pretty good on the paper. Now, this may be like more reasonable approach, but there's still something missing because it doesn't take into account to the true extent of your emotions that you're feeling about in this relationship. Now, in the reasonable mind, things can often look good on the paper, despite the fact that they don't even make you happy. And maybe when you do your pros and cons list, it looks like you should stay on the relationship. You like it looks like you want to stay in the relationship, but you often feel unloved and unsupported, or maybe even alone. Or you just feel like you love the other person, but you're not in love with them. But these feelings don't get factored from just the reasonable mind alone. So this is where the wise mind comes into play. Now, so looking at both what the reasonable mind and the emotional mind are telling us is a good place to start, but it's not sufficient. And this is why we need a wise mind. Now, the essence of the wise mind is that it taps into our intuition and our inner wisdom. It does take more than just the account of the reasonable and the emotional side of the things. Involves our gut feelings, and that's just something we cannot get through the analysis. It doesn't even translate into the paper, and that's what's missing when we are trying to figure out something but just can't find an answer that feels right. Now, the wise mind integrates both emotion and logic. I know it may seem surprising, right? Now, it represents a mature, reflective, and responsive approach to life. Now, operating from the wise mind means being thoughtful and open to other perspectives, even when they challenge your beliefs. Now, it usually involves pausing before reacting, asking questions instead of judging, and seeking balance rather than the extremes. Now, this is the mindset that allows us to connect deeply with ourselves and others while maintaining clarity and purpose. Now, to grow, we must reflect on how we think and why we react the way that we do. Now, awareness begins by asking ourselves: do I react emotionally to new ideas? Am I over relying on logic and ignoring the emotional needs of others? Am I open to learning and seeing the world from the new perspectives? Now, these questions help us identify which part of the mind we are operating from and guide us towards developing a more reflective, growth centered approach. From learning to living simply. Now, true, true education isn't about the complexity, it's about the clarity. Now, those who truly understand ideas can express them simply. A, a person who makes things complicated often fully grasps them. As students of the psychology or life, we don't need complex theories to grow. What we need are simple, powerful principles that help us reflect honestly and apply what we learn to real life. Now, this balance of simplicity and depth is the key to becoming more philosophical, open minded, and effective in our thinking. Now, the ultimate the ultimate goal at this stage of learning is to develop the part of our wise mind. We are born emotionally reactive and grow intellectually through education, but at some point we must move into the reflective, mature stage of personal development. Now, this allows us not to just accumulate knowledge, but to embody wisdom, which helps us respond to life with understanding, compassion, and with a desire to grow. Well, I hope you guys liked this today's lesson, and yeah, thank you, and have a nice day. Bye.